I've never properly had training around like change management or system thinking.
This is Tem, who runs the probably biggest Notion consultancy out there, Optemization.
Understanding how a person prefers to work, how maybe, their working patterns are suboptimal.
Tem has managed to use his Notion and people skills to go from earning $15 an hour as an intern to having a consultancy that just crossed $1 million in annual recurring revenue.
I get triggered when I see like posts on X or LinkedIn like, oh, Typeform is $65 in a month.
Which makes him the perfect person to ask about how to build a business around Notion. So in this episode you learn how a bullet journal kickstarted his career as a consultant.
And here's this guy offering to pay me thousands of dollars to set him up on Notion.
How to go from freelance consultant to running a team.
It was very simple math. It was like, I get paid this amount, I pay Valentin this amount, and like, we'll see what happens.
The exact tech stack that powers his $1 million consultancy.
You can twist and turn and customize and integrate Notion to serve that purpose, but Atio already does that for you.
And the key to building great Notion workspaces for companies.
Notion is also a B2B SaaS tool where it needs to get the job done, and it needs to get the job done fast.
So, how do you explain to other people what you actually do all day long?
It depends who the other person is. If I am at a tech event and they happen to see my Notion tattoo, I say, oh, I do Notion consulting, and odds are that they know what Notion is. So we kind of like explore what does it mean to do Notion consulting, and then I kind of explain that like, oh, it's a whole business, there's a team, and we have a process and a methodology and yada yada. If on the other hand, if we're not at a tech event and I sort of kind of maybe pick up somehow that they're not that techie, or maybe they just tell me they don't know Notion, I describe it as a tech consultancy. And then I sort of draw the analogy that this is similar to companies that like implement Salesforce or Google Workspace, G Suite, or Microsoft onto companies as a tool to like get work done.
Yeah, that sounds like a very smart answer. I'm still struggling with mine, so I'm always curious to see how other people...
took me a while to figure that out. I mean, I don't think I've definitely figured it out, but we were playing in a brand new playing field, in a way, new category. Like there's bound to be confusion, misconception, and it's on us to figure out a way to explain it and in a way that resonates.
Yeah. That makes sense. If like maybe just quick follow up there. So if you're like at a family dinner with some more your own family members, and they keep pressing you on like, so they never heard of Notion, and you accidentally dropped it, you do Notion consulting. Now they ask, well, so
yeah,
what is Notion? What's the thing about it? Do you have a good answer for that?
Oof, that's a hard one, because like Notion, it can be so many different things for different people, right? For some, it's just a simple checklist. For another person, it's their whole business operating system, right? For a third person, it's their journal. So that's the beauty, but also the not the danger, but like the confusion around Notion. So when it comes to my family, generally we're talking about sort of more like low tech people ish. So I talk about it as like I describe it as a note-taking tool that ultimately helps people to like be more productive and organized. I think the word organized resonates in like, I think in Russian, and like in kind of the attitudes that people have in towards tech and IT back where I'm from. I'm from Kazakhstan, by the way.
Yeah, that's really cool as well. Like, so what made you move across the world? And I think you're in New York now, right? Or
Yes, I am in New York in the Lower East Side. That's where I spend most of my time. I'm between New York and London. I got to the United States actually for boarding school. So originally there was a bit of a trend when I was a high schooler of like, if your family can afford it, to ship away your kids into foreign boarding school so that they upskill, upgrade, and get to a like CV or resume level to get into like prestigious colleges, right? So that was sort of the original motivation. And I first went to a school in Switzerland, in Italy, Italian part, Lugano. And then I ended up transferring to a school in New York for 3 months. Then I got kicked out of that school. Ended up in a school in New Hampshire for another 2.5 years. Basically spent 6 years in high school, given my
Yeah.
zigzagging, and graduated at the ripe age of 20 and ended up at NYU, New York for college. And I've been pretty much here since then, plus minus some pandemic, shenanigans, travel.
Yeah. That's a really cool trajectory. And then you turned it from like NYU into, building probably one of the biggest Notion consultancies that there is. Could you maybe tell me a little bit more about, like what made you go down that route?
Absolutely. We'll start from bullet points and then like pull on threads that may be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Before I got to NYU in 2015, first of all, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My mom, dad, brother, all and uncles all had various businesses. And keep in mind that like Kazakhstan gained independence in 1991, so it was like a free for all. Like you go out and you say, "This is my bag." Now it's your bag, and you're an entrepreneur. Like it's kind of crazy, right? A new
Yeah.
currency. So I guess entrepreneurship is sort of my little like part of the, I don't know, in my life. Point is was like something that's like very common.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of led me to deciding that I want to start a business, and I want to study business. And so I actually started sports management at NYU, which is like the business of sports.
Mm-hmm.
And right before college, I came up with this idea to create a fitness tracker for weightlifting specifically. And I like pursued that in earnest. That was my first business. Like I
Yeah.
recruited a team. I had the pitch deck, had like prototypes. I won some grant money. I got some money from my parents, and it was like a real business. Felt like a real business, but we never shipped the product. We had no revenue. Everyone was part time, including myself. So over the course of 2 years, the momentum died, and the business failed, or the startup failed, so shut down.
Mm-hmm.
However, that experience brought me two things. It brought me into the entrepreneurship community at NYU and broadly New York City. And number two, it let me discover my fascination and my predisposition towards tools and using kind of like software things to work more productively. And at that time, I did have other leadership positions, so I was sort of carrying the burden of a leader, but not really knowing how to
Mm-hmm.
lead. And I think one of my responses to that, like, let's use all these tools, and that's sort of one way that I would like lead our team to like collaborate better. And so that's what led me to discovering. I distinctly remember that discovering Trello 2016, then finding Asana and Airtable the following year, and then like figuring out Slack and sort of frameworks around project management and stand-ups and yada yada, and leading eventually to 2018 when I discovered Notion on Product Hunt. And I wasn't really like looking for a replacement, but I just stumbled into it, had like thousands of upvotes, and I became a user there, a user at Notion. I also run a startup club, so I remember there was a lot of
Mm-hmm.
like organization in there. We had like really good Airtable. I was an Airtable pro already,
Yeah.
and I just remember like we had events, we had mentors, we had pitches, we had startups, like all in databases, but it was between Airtable, Google Drive, and like form software, doc software. I just brought the two softwares to our team, and I was Notion and Coda. I was like, look at
Mm-hmm.
these two. We should
Yeah.
pick one. I am pretty sure we should pick one. And then we ended up choosing Notion for sure. And that was like my ascension to being a power user of the tool. Should I pause there or should we keep going?
No, this is super interesting. Like how you found out. So I would love to know, like, what's next. How you go from introducing Notion to the team and other people to actually building it, and like probably making a pretty big jump, right, to actually build a consultancy around this.
Yeah. So I became a power user of Notion, and then I started hanging out in the online communities, specifically the Facebook community, Notion Made Simple, that was started by Francesco D'Alessio and moderated by Alex, one of our ambassadors. And so one time I saw a product launch on product called NotionPages.com by this guy named Ben Lang. And so I thought that was pretty cool. That was the first, I think, iteration of a template gallery
Mm-hmm.
within the Notion ecosystem. And then Ben got hired at Notion, as you may know, and he posted on that Facebook group, said like, "Hey, we're hosting Notion sponsored events." At that time, there were a lot of events, but they weren't Notion sponsored; they were just affiliated. So Notion organized events, and he's like, "Who's in New
Yeah.
York?" I was one of the two people that raised my hand very enthusiastically on a Facebook comment, and so he offered me to attend the event. And then as we got chatting, he offered me to present at the event. And he was like, "We need some kind of personal angle, maybe bullet journaling." And I was like, "Yes, sir." Like, I was bored for this. And then I go to my computer. I'm like, "Wait, what is bullet journaling exactly?" So I like type of fake it till you make it. Like, I knew I could figure it out. So I sort of skimmed through the internet. I understood what bullet journaling is. I created like a template for that, and it was like the most complicated template ever, but it was an interesting presentation. I think people understood one thing, and it was like, this guy is great at Notion. And I was like, really enthusiastic about my presentation. And so Ben approached me and said, "Hey, we're starting this program. It's called the Notion Pros. That's the very first ambassador program. Do you want to be part of it?" I was like, "Yes, sir." I was born for it. And unlike bullet journaling, I actually had expertise with event management at that point. I hosted a bunch of events. I was really about startups, and kind of like that was overlapping. That opportunity was an overlap between the two. So next thing you know, I'm hosting a few events as a Notion ambassador, and on the third event, a guy named Ian comes up to me, and he's the founder of an insurance trucking startup, and is like 5 people using Confluence. So he says, "Hey, I want to move from Confluence to Notion. Can I pay you like a couple $1,000s to do this?" And like in my mind, like something lit up. I was like, "Wait, I'm here as an intern at Techstars and a few other accelerators making $15 an hour and preaching about Notion, but nobody's listening to me as much. And here's this guy offering to pay me thousands of dollars to set him up on Notion." And I was like, "Yes, sir. I was bored for this." And so that was my first ever project for a Notion Consulting. Maybe first project in the world. I have no idea, but that was the beginning, the very beginning. There's obviously 4 years between where we at now, but I don't know if we want to go into it now.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to touch a bit more on it, but that's super cool to hear. And particularly, you were really there from the beginning. So for those who don't know, right, like Ben Lang, he was one of the very early employees at Notion, and he basically created or helped create the Notion Ambassador program. And with that, probably like kickstart what I think nowadays most people would agree, right, that the Notion community marketing was like super integral to like the growth. And I mean, it's just a really fun community to be a part of. So yeah, really cool to hear how that all kickstarted your career as well. Great. So from that point, right, where you say, okay, like I have like the this like first client, few thousand dollars, but you're also like still working with tech startups. What was your thought process at the time, right? Were you already like thinking, okay, maybe there's something more, want to work in that area? Or is it more like, well, that's some nice pocket money on the side, but let's focus on some proper business ideas and use it more as a side gig?
I knew I wanted to start a second business after my first one didn't work out. And in fact, I was like closely collaborating with a friend of mine from the startup club that we both were involved with, and her name was Quinn. And at that time, I went by Tim, Tim. So we kind of decided that we're gonna do consulting for colleges to like start their startup programs, because like that was our direct experience, and we called it Quinn Tim League. And funny thing, wordplay has always been in my blood.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So it didn't quite work out, but we did like land the client, and then we tried working on it, and we just realized we were not very compatible. So I decided to like part ways. And at that time, as I was so like a couple months prior, my mentor slash employer texted me something, and he says like I showed him off this like new Notion thing, and he's like, "You're always optimizing." And I'm like looking at this message, I'm like, optimizing. Optimizing. Oh my God. My name is in the word. So I changed my social media usernames to Optemization. And that's how the name came about. But even as I was doing this project, what I actually wanted to do was work at Notion. So I started the interview process. I met at that point with Camille. She was the head of marketing. And, I was doing the exercise. I was writing like like how can you introduce someone to Notion as a
Mm.
blog post or something like that. And I wrote like a really long blog post, and I was excited about this. But then I found out that they're not offering H1B sponsorship. So I was like, okay, well, it's either Notion or self-employment. And so
Yeah.
that's where I decided to start Optemization, because I couldn't work at Notion. So there is a parallel universe where I probably
Yeah.
joined Ben as an early Notion employee, and who knows what would have happened. I'd probably get a lot richer. No, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But that's
Yeah.
sort of how it led to like actually starting the company. And I will say, like, I didn't really know that it is a company. Obviously, like, sort of
Yeah.
incorporated, created a bank account. But the very first website was just me as like, I am
Mm.
Optimization. I am a
Yeah.
consultant. I'm a freelancer. I am, helping you with Notion stuff. And like, it was very much about Notion plus remote work. And I launched it
Mm.
like March 2020. So the
Yeah.
timing of it was just kind of bonkers.
Yeah.
That then that idea coincided with everyone going remote and such.
Good timing for sure. And then you were you like in the beginning you were solo, right? But now you run a fairly large team. So maybe you could share a little bit more about like how does that journey go? Because I cannot like I do this on my own right now for a while, and for me one of the biggest at least mental hurdles as well, like thinking about, okay, do I really want to go from this process right now where I do most of these things and everything on my own, to being responsible for other people. So would love to hear, for very selfish reasons, how you went about like maybe hiring your first person, how you made that decision, and how you went about that.
Yeah. Um, just to draw the contrast, I started alone. We're now 12 people, and I
Mm.
think we're hiring. Yeah, we're hiring right now. And I think there is a bit of mental shifts that occurred for sure, but I will say that I've been very privileged and very lucky to have had some cash flow or some cash to be able to deploy to hire someone, right?
Mm.
So when I found out that I couldn't get H1B, I really needed to figure out my visa path or try to stay in the US. So one of the only options was a visa called E2. And
Mm.
that requires a foreign national who's part of a treaty country that has a treaty with the United States to start a
Mm.
business, own 50% of that, and then take, give or take, $100,000 and like
Mm.
invest that into the business, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that has to be your money, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
obviously did not have that money, and so I was very fortunate to be able to source that money from my family. So
Mm.
that's the starting capital of Optimization, and that's like a really big distinction because that money can then be put towards hiring someone. I didn't do that right away. I think I was keen on figuring out the actual like work, the deliverables, the process. But about the 6 months mark, I was a member of a Telegram channel called MakerLog. And it was people
Mm.
just like posting their to-dos and their projects of that they were making. And then
Yeah.
I just posted like a message. It was like, hey, I do Notion stuff. Who wants to do Notion stuff for money? And this
Yeah.
one person responded. His name is Valentine, and turns out he is a guy based in Austria. He's Russian. He moved to Austria. He's like I think, project manager at that time. And we just chatted, and he did a little project for me. And
Mm.
like basically, it was very simple math. It was like, I get paid this amount. I pay Valentine this amount, and like we'll see what happens. And he like the
Yeah.
first project, he just was outstanding. Like the deliverable was really great, the communication was great, everything was good. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll give you another project. And then he took that on and smashed it, succeeded. And then I was like, hey, maybe we should do this full time. And he was like, yeah, sure. Like, this is what I make at my current job. I was like, okay, I can match that. And just because I had
Mm.
the cash in the bank.
Yeah.
And then our,
Yeah.
our cash flow was like, maybe let's call it like 5K or so revenue per month. Within
Mm.
a month of him joining, because he took over any of the delivery projects, I could focus on some quote unquote like marketing, newsletters, whatever. Then the revenue doubled, and I think tripled
Yeah.
shortly thereafter. And like
Yeah.
comparing that first year, we totally like made maybe like 50K in revenue. The second
Mm.
year, us together, maybe some other a few people here and there, but we made like 300. So
Yeah.
340. So it's like almost
Yeah.
7x.
Yeah. That's insane.
But that's the first hire. I don't know if we want to stop
Mm.
there or going to go to the rest of the team build out. I guess might as well, right?
Yes. Let's keep going. Yeah, this is super interesting.
Again, I was very, very fortunate. Like now that Val and I, we were just kind of create this power duo, and we are just executing projects one after the other. I think all of the projects were mostly the same size, but then in terms of their company and like the
Yeah.
budget and all of that, we were probably charging like maybe between 3 to 6K for the entire project. And then we had a big breakthrough in July of 2021. Um, I will preface that breakthrough with the fact that when the firm originally started, I had a very lucky moment where someone named Nick Sharma, he is a like direct to consumer influencer, or like the most well known name in direct to consumer um, category. He tweeted
Yeah.
that was June 2020. So he tweeted, said, "Is Notion Consulting a thing? I need help." And then
Yeah.
because I had a bit of a reputation on Twitter as a Notion guy before
Mm.
Easlow, bless him, but
Yeah.
before Easlow, I a lot of people tagged me in there, and I was
Yeah.
like telling my friends, I was like, "Yo, tag me more. I need more
Yeah.
social proof." And so the reason
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
bring up this story is because that helped me land Nick as a customer, and then
Mm.
he believed in me like very genuinely, and he supported me, and he would like refer other clients, and then other clients would ask like, "Hey, is this guy legit?" And he would
Mm.
say 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah.
So then fast forward to July of 2021, a certain well-known firm called Metal Lab. It's a design agency that built like Uber and Slack apps. And it was founded by Andrew Wilkinson. So it's like has a lot of, let's call it, social capital.
Mm.
They were looking for a Notion slash Zapier project, and we were in the running for this opportunity. And so Justin Watt, who now runs his
Mm.
own agency, talked to Nick, and Nick was like, "Yo, just hire them." So they hired us. So
Yeah.
Metal Lab was like the first big logo that we felt like,
Yeah.
oh, like we're legit. We
Yeah.
can land these projects, and
Mm.
we can charge more. And
Yeah.
so over time, like the logos became more significant. So after that,
Mm.
we landed a project with like Discord and then others. So the logos were more significant. The budgets,
Mm.
the pricing, we like started increasing our pricing as well, up to like 15K a month for some of the retainers. I will say that was like a big jump that then we kind of jumped down from. So, and basically the more work, the more necessitated to expand the team. And
Mm.
again, super fortunate, super lucky, because I was plugged into the Notion ambassador community. Like I
Yeah.
almost at the early days knew everyone. So I had
Yeah.
conversations from the ambassador community, from Twitter, about potential hires, and then everyone that joined came from that actually.
Mm.
One of the people that is our star employee, Louisa, I actually found her on Fiverr. So I just went on Fiverr and searched for the
Yeah.
best Notion consultants, and she was at the top. And I
Yeah.
messaged her. I was like, "Hey, how about doing this actually like salaried on a monthly basis?" Because everyone at Optemization is salaried.
Yeah.
Never like on and off for projects. That was always my mindset, that it has to be like reliable,
Mm.
consistent, and like safe in a
Yeah.
way. So I was like, "How about this, but like higher rates and salaried?" And so she was in. So actually, most of the teammates are going to now celebrate like 3-year anniversaries soon.
That's really cool. I mean, it's particularly crazy if you think about it. This is like, still something, as you said, right, like super young, right? Like it's not like, Notion Consulting has been around the block. You're probably one of the very first ones who really offered it. Maybe the first project
Yeah.
ever. And so just the fact, right, that you have now like 3 years already under the belt, uh, that's insane. What would you say, like, if you look at this now and like comparison of, how you run the business today versus how it was in the very early days? Is there like anything in particular that stands out where you would say, okay, that's a hard lesson that I had to learn?
I think a lot of the hard lessons are around strategy, and specifically around marketing and sales. Um, Operationally, I think I've been somehow predisposed to be pretty good, or maybe my previous like university leadership experience enabled
Yeah.
me to be a better leader. I will say, just that comment on operationally, like some of the values that we've aligned on Optimization, we have an acronym for them, is like COAST. So
Mhm.
C for conscientiousness, O for openness, A for autonomy, S for system thinking, and T for trust and trustworthiness. So that
Mhm.
last part is huge, because I always brought in our teammates and really any people in my life, whether it's friends or partners or colleagues, with 100% trust. So I start with believing that you're the best at this and you know how to do this. And then should there be any like problems, mistakes, blemishes, whatever, no, mistakes is fine, but like serious problems, then we can kind of reevaluate the trust level. So what I mean to say is like, I think it was really important for me to hire someone fully remote. By the way, to this day, I've never met Val. Like he worked with us for 2.5 years, but I've never still met him. And I gotta correct this. That was a bit of my bad. But point is like I trusted him fully to like execute the projects, and then eventually became the team manager and all that. So that was, I think, it's not really a lesson, but I think it's a principle that's really important to proliferate in remote and hybrid work settings, because if there is no trust, then it just leads to micromanagement, and that leads to poor like resentment, and then poor communication, and it's just not the way to run a company or run a team in our, I think, modern times.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive that you managed to build like this kind of team with like an all remote culture. I love remote work, right? Like I wouldn't want to miss it. I wouldn't want to have to to go to the office every single day. But I can definitely see that like the big challenge in remote teams is like of course communication and the ops side a little bit more, but I would say that the even bigger one is building like a culture and like this like feeling of we're in this together. This is not just me sitting in front of my desk every day alone, and then occasionally once a week hopping on the call and basically seeing like one face all week. So is there any have you found any secret sauce to make that work at Optemization, or what would you say? How do you try to build culture?
I'm proud to say that I think we have a pretty good culture. I don't know if this is necessarily secret sauce or whatever, but like, I mean, at least I feel like I'm unapologetically myself when like communicating. So specifically when it comes to loops, like I am kind of a humorous and goofy person, so I will just like sometimes record these loops where I have like crazy entrances where I just like slide in like this, or like come like really zoomed in, zoomed out. I would just like have a lot of fun with recording loops for my team. And I feel like that like kind of levity, that humor does transpire into like the culture. Because like I remember this quote from Brian Chesky. I think he said that, Airbnb CEO, was like, culture is the things that happen when you're not looking, when nobody's looking, right? So I think like me setting that precedent perhaps enables people to bring in the humor, the levity, that type of attitude into work. So that's kind of one just off example, but I think two other intentional things that I can mention. One is the usage of a tool called Kona. So they currently, I think, put that product on the back burner, but they launched with a mental health check-in product. So basically, in Slack. So it's very simple. Every day it asks you a question like, hey, rate your well-being on a scale of red, yellow, green. Right? Corresponding to red, poor, really bad, yellow, okay, green, great. And then it can offer you an opportunity to attach an emoji to like elaborate, and then you can write a little text. And so we've been using Kona, I think maybe 2.5 or almost 3 years to like maintain that openness between one another, right? Like that goes into our second value, to just like be real with me. How you feeling? What's going on? Like, and then the two things, sort of the humor and Kona, kind of work one another together sometimes. Like for example, today my chief of staff Natalie had like a yellow check-in, and she says like, sick husband equals poor sleep, and then I respond same. So that's like something that I think is valuable, like because it's also like every time somebody checks in with a yellow or a red, not every time but a lot of the times, like it necessitates a message, be like, hey, what's going on, like how can I help, like let's collaborate, let's make sure you feel okay, or even if you're feeling poorly, like let's just help you get through the work, right? And the last bit I will mention is it has to do with our team meetings or all hands. Actually, I am I started a YouTube channel, and that's going to be a video. I'm going to release a video about this. But we have a very specific way of running team meetings, or
Yeah.
sometimes people refer to them as all hands. So first of all, we have the agenda in Notion. I record a pre-game, so like I record a loom where I go through that agenda and kind of point out the important parts, and I try to send it beforehand, so it's asynchronous preparation.
Yeah.
And then every meeting has a title that references a film or TV episode. So because I love film and TV, like our Notion pages end up looking like, and by the way, we call it seasons and episodes instead of meetings. So
Yeah.
we're in year 4, season 4 of Optemization, and we just had yesterday
Nice.
episode
Yeah.
5. So that's like the fifth meeting of this year.
Mm.
And it was like styled after the movie called First Man, and it was chosen by one of my teammates because like we reached a financial milestone, and we're going to the moon. So that was the reference why that title was picked for that meeting. And so we pick a title, we pick a cover photo, we pick also an audio track. So as people kind of trickling in, we play audio and kind of like get the vibes going. And then last thing we do, we used to do it weekly, but we like have everyone share an icebreaker, like a fun fact or something that goes into a database and like builds a library of fun facts. Yesterday we just played Among Us, just kind of like a little icebreaker. Wow. But yes, so I feel like those 3 things have contributed to a unique culture at Optemization.
That's really, really, really interesting. And I definitely want to get back to the rest of the tech stack in a second. And regarding your YouTube channel, I will definitely binge watch every single one of them. So I'm very, very excited for more videos to come out. Link for everyone who wants to subscribe in the description. 100% would recommend that you do check that out. There will be a lot of great things coming. But yeah, before we go to the tech stack, now I need to ask you, what's your favorite sitcom? Right? Because I think that's a very important character test. So no pressure.
I will say I'm not like I haven't seen all of them. I haven't seen most of them. The one that's close to me, and that's the one that I've watched more than once, is How I Met Your Mother. So, a single man on the prowl in New York with balancing hopelessness and romanticism. Isn't that my life these days? Except I'm not an architect. Well, I am an architect of workspaces.
Yes, yes. So you can also put your name on things that you build, and definitely pass the test. That's actually that would have been my answer as well. I would say like the first seasons haven't aged that well, but like overall, I still defend it as like the best thing ever. I have a yellow umbrella keychain somewhere, but it broke, so I can't use it anymore. But very happy that you said that.
Yes, sir. I have not, to be fair to other sitcoms, I have not properly seen Friends or Office or Modern Family or insert sitcom. I just haven't. And I honestly don't really feel the interest, but I feel like out of respect for the art, I will at some point watch it.
Oh yes, I can definitely recommend. And with The Office, I would also like you need to get through the first 5 episodes. That's where they do the same script as the British one, and they are not the greatest piece. But afterwards, it's insane. But,
interesting.
Yeah, I still haven't seen the last episode of How I Met Your Mother. I have refused to this day. So I know how it ends, but I've refused watching it. So for me, there's still hope as to how it ends. But let's circle back to the mental health check-in that you mentioned and the tech stack, right? I would be very curious to hear like what is sort of the tech stack, like the most important tools that you run optimization on, except for Notion, because that's probably given.
Yeah. I think Slack is huge, and Slack is getting a lot of slack these days, where it's like a tool it's very distracting and whatever. I think we use it really well. I think we have specific conventions around when to post messages, how to post messages, who to tag, and so on. So that's important. That's actually part of what I consider our category. So I think our category is called workspace design, and I think it's about like intentional rollout, like evaluation, implementation, and maintenance of tools. So what I just described about like convention around Slack, that I think is good implementation with workspace design in mind. And of course, Slack integrates with Notion and other tools, and we have like bots and etc. I think Slack is probably the biggest tool that we wouldn't be able to like operate without. I think another one is Loom. Loom, not so much because it's at the end of the day, it's just a quick video recorder, but
Yeah.
we do use it a hell of a lot. Similarly, Zoom, like
Yeah.
in a way, maybe take pride in paying for a Zoom license and not writing out free Google Meets because I don't. Every time I try to use Google Meets, it doesn't work. But connected to Zoom, we have Grain. So Grain
Yeah.
is a tool that essentially enables asynchronous interaction with a meeting. Because previously,
Mhm.
like watch the Zoom recording, nobody would ever do it. But
Yeah.
take Grain and clip a few key highlights and share that. That's a whole new paradigm of interaction
Mm.
with meetings asynchronously. So Grain is
Yeah.
huge. There's a bunch more tools. Oh, speaking of connected to culture, we have a Slack bot called Hey Taco, and basically
Mm.
what that does is that every time that enables users to do is like in Slack tag a person and then put a
Mm.
taco emoji, and essentially that's like a recognition piece. So
Yeah.
there is everyone gets 5 tacos to distribute every day, and then there's like the
Mm.
leaderboard of who gets tacos and whatnot. And
Yeah.
so it's a very good way to like encourage gratitude, even though I
Mm.
think gratitude is an unspoken value. It's not part of Coast, but I'm kind of thinking a
Yeah.
way to like bring it into Coast.
Yeah.
Maybe add like Coast Guard, so G would be
Yeah.
a
Nice.
gratitude part.
Yeah.
Um, but I think it's quite important to like highlight. We always also have a Taco Tuesday, so we say like
Mm.
highlight a job well done or a recent win, and we just have a
Mm.
running thread of all these like
Ooh. Yeah.
appreciation posts. And by the way, it's not just that; it's also rewardful in a way or rewarding because one
Mm.
taco equals to $1. So people can
Mm.
like redeem tacos for gift cards
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah.
As other tools, we don't really have file storage that much, but like Dropbox, Google,
Yeah.
sometimes it's not really a big need. I'm probably missing other tools. Oh, Zapier. Oh my God, Zapier is huge. Like it's,
Yeah.
Zapier and Make.com, we use both of
Yeah.
them. They're like the
Yeah.
glue between all the tools. Like without them, I feel like I'd have to have double the size of the team to like manually add things to spreadsheets and or not
Yeah.
spreadsheets, like Notion tables and all that. So like, oh, that's like, thank God Zapier exists. Thank you, Wade Foster and everyone else involved. Speaking of Zapier, we do have Notion connected through Zapier to Atio. Itio is my
Mm.
current CRM and
Yeah.
our current CRM. So we switched into Itio and it's incredible. It's
Mm.
basically Notion for the
Mm.
use case of customer relation management, which
Yeah.
like technically you can twist and turn and customize and integrate Notion to serve that purpose. But Itio already does that for you,
Yeah.
and that's their job to like maintain this kind of
Mm.
workflow. So in my
Mm.
mind, it does make sense to not have all in one everything in
Yeah.
Notion, but
Mm.
have core CRM workflows in Attio, but then integrate with Notion where relevant, right? For
Yeah.
tasks and nodes. Personally, I use also Superhuman. I use Text.com. I use we actually played around with Linear, so we might be getting back into Linear. It's a longer conversation, but I also use Vimcal personally.
Yeah.
I use Arc, and yeah, and Pitch.com. We also have all our pitch decks at Pitch.com.
They're great. They're Berlin based. Like I was at their offices a few times. Great, great company. They always
Yeah,
host
yeah,
our.
yeah.
They've hosted a few Notion community meetups here. So love pitch.
Amazing, amazing. Is there anything else worth mentioning? Not that I can think of right now.
Hmm.
Of course, we have a database in Notion that has all our tools, so I can reference that sneakily here.
Nice. And maybe
Uh,
while you reference like after that, I would also then love to talk a little bit more about what you mentioned with using Atio as a CRM instead of Notion, because I
mhm.
think that's like
Listen,
something that people often get hung up on. Is this like
yeah,
conversation?
yeah.
When should I use Notion? When should I try to rebuild other tools in Notion? And when should
Mhm.
I go somewhere else?
Yeah. I will get into it just to
Yeah.
finish the last question.
Yeah.
Other tools that we use is 1Password for passwords, Deal for international payments and contracts
Mm.
and compliance, Figma and FigJam for designs and whiteboards, obviously Google Workspace for calendar and email. Mercury is our bank. NordLayer is our VPN/security software. SavvyCal is our scheduling tool. and Stripe is our payments platform, and finally Typeform is our form builder of choice.
Nice. That's a pretty cool tech stack. I'll also link all the tools in the description if anyone wants to copy paste.
Affiliate
But
links.
yes, affiliate links. Yeah, I don't have because I can put your affiliate links. But
Please.
yeah, no. Okay, let's talk Atio and the
Mm-hmm.
very philosophical question of when do you escape Notion to use, a different tool? What would you say? What's your take on that?
Transparently, that is a framework / mental model that's always evolving. And we don't have the right answer in every use case. And I think it also depends on number of factors, mostly including like what the workflow is and who the users are, right? There are certain preferences among users of like wanting to just use one tool or being okay and technically savvy to jump between tools or having like a desktop setup that like allows that to be done smoothly. I think, by the way, this speaks to the design part of workspace design because given that there's so many options in terms of tools, and within these tools, there's so many customization options and whatnot, what we believe is really important in our work, regardless, by the way, if Notion shuts down, if Notion gets acquired or whatever, is the design aspect of like understanding how a person prefers to work, how maybe, their working patterns are suboptimal, how, they're pre-configured for their own little, um, neuroses or preferences, and then like putting that into a workflow or building that into a workflow. So really the answer is it depends. But in our case, I'll reiterate that I felt like we could have built a CRM in Notion, but what we would have to do is like essentially build a number of internal products, aka integrations with email, with calendar, with other data sources like Apollo and Crunchbase and all that. And like that is a high cost to spend on something that's already offered in a separate product for $69 a month a user. So that's kind of my decision tree in that regard. And of course, like Notion has a bunch of limitations. Like you can build a event website or just a website, but like Luma or Partiful or Eventbrite, they handle the signups, they handle the emails, they handle like the payments. There's so much stuff that already is handled by a platform that makes sense to outsource, not even outsource, to handle in that platform.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. In particular, the thing around like figuring out what are your, what is the cost of both solutions involved there. Often also like building these workflows in Notion is really cool, but they tend to be a bit more hacky, right? They tends to be a little bit more duct tape involved. And if you build that solution yourself in Notion, then you have to fix it. Whereas with another tool, someone else has to hopefully fix it if there's a bug. And then always the question like what is the main strength of each tool?
I like how you use the word cost, by the way, because like I think monetary cost of how much you pay for a SaaS tool is the least of concerns. And like to be honest, I get triggered when I see like posts on X or LinkedIn like, oh, Typeform is $65 a month. Like what the hell? I'm like, this is in my mind, like this is basically majoring in the minors. Like I think it's so minor. Like obviously there's situations where like there's no revenue and you're bootstrapped and you need to economize. I understand that, but like I think optimizing on SaaS software when you're like 2 to 5 people, when you're not thousands or hundreds, I think it's a waste of time. I think pay for great products, especially if they're built by your friends or colleagues, and like make it worth it. And so like the cost that matters a lot more that you alluded to is like the cost of maintaining something or using something or like paying the cost of inefficiency or maybe like creating a system and then abandoning that system and so on. These are way larger costs than the money that you pay for the product.
Fully agree with that. And would also be really interesting to hear from you along these same lines, where like when typically how it happens when clients approach me, a lot of times it's like, okay, like we need a system in Notion, we need like a project management system in Notion, like, XYZ in Notion. And it's like, it's very tool driven, like, okay, this is found Notion, right? We convinced this is the right thing. Now we need to build something. And the building part is actually the easy one, right? Like, I mean, there are like hundreds of thousands of people like on Twitter and the subreddit and all in all the groups that are like really, really good at building Notion. And so like that, like the actual building part of a project management, that's what people typically want from you. I would say that's like the easiest part. The much harder parts are then all the other steps that go along with it, right? Like change management, like this like general understanding of the operations. How does it fit in? Like, will people actually use it? What is the the long-term consequences of building it like this
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
not like that, compared to, okay, let's put these blocks together, right? So would be really curious to maybe like, yeah, what are your thoughts in general on that, and also like how you got more into that area, not just like you're a person who can build a really complicated bullet journal system from day one in Notion.
Yeah, yeah. It's I don't really know where it originated. I think maybe it's a bit of inherent empathy capacity that I have, and it's not great, by the way. It's just I think I can be empathetic, and it's also like in a way like driven by optimal outcomes and like good strategy to get to a good outcome. I think you need to have good input, like high quality inputs. And I think
Mm,
one side of those inputs is my expertise around Notion and then knowing, what to build in Notion. But the other side of this input is the aforementioned like preferences and quirks and peculiarities of how someone else works. Combining these leads to like a good outcome from a strategy perspective. But then to get those inputs out of them, you need to have that empathy about yourself, right? And like be willing to just be open to what they have to say, consider what they're having to say, and not force down the solution on them, but like come to an agreement that may potentially work for them, right? Again,
mm.
the design part of workspace design. Um, so what was your original question? Kind of
Yeah, yeah.
forgot.
No, pretty much in that area, like this thing
Yeah,
where like there's a lot more that goes into like a proper system, right? And other than just knowing which features in Notion to combine. Um,
yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
like probably, yeah, like how you learned about it, or how you're trying to, like improving that aspect of the workflow or the design.
Yeah, yeah. I think unfortunately for our like business overall, I've had hard time like reading consistently nonfiction,
Mm,
especially like
yeah,
I know like this book like Thinking Fast and Slow or like, you know, even the bullet journaling book or the Inbox Zero book or Getting Things Done, like I have a hard time actually like getting through those. I love fiction and I enjoy
mm,
that. But the reason I bring this up is like I've never properly had training around like change management or system
yeah,
thinking or for that matter. But I sort of like intuitively figuring it out piece by piece, which I think in a way could be advantageous because it's very tactile and like on the job
mm,
learning. But also I feel like I could get a lot more perspective and more like strategic approach if I had like read and consumed these things. So one of the ways that we're approaching now is like the employee that I mentioned, teammate called Louisa. Her name is Louisa. She is in charge of design, and like
yeah,
she thankfully loves books, and so she's reading all like the
yeah,
design stuff and the change management stuff, and like I whenever she visited New York, so I like set her up with people, someone who like does UX at Equinox, someone who does UX at this time. Like I set her up with resources to like be able to sponge it in and be able to
mm,
develop like a unique perspective on the design part of
yeah,
workspace design. Um, so I guess maybe that goes back to this principle that not even principle, but like quote, like hire people way smarter than yourself and then
yeah,
let them do the thing, which is
yeah.
what I've done and I think it's been remarkable.
Yeah, that's a very very good thing to do, right? If you find these people and gems. Maybe in this along
Yeah.
the same lines, it's I think maybe the same question, but from a different angle, and that it's there are like hundreds of thousands of Notion templates available that offer you like a company OS and like the next perfect project management system for your company for $5 or for free, uh, and compare that now to a real consultancy like yours, where you say, right, your projects run in the thousands per month. Um, what would you say is like the main value that you at Optemization provide to clients, right? Why is it worth for them to spend 6 7 plus k, rather than download Notion standard project sprints and
Yeah.
task template?
Yeah. I think that like Notion and particularly just modern tools, sometimes referred to as tools for thought, have an inherent tension amongst their customers, right?
Mm,
And that tension is between hobbyism and tinkering and
mm,
execution and performance.
mm.
So
Yeah.
what I mean by that is like Notion is this wonderful tool that you can customize 100 different ways, but that attitude is one of a tinker and a hobbyist who is interested in like learning the minutia, the nuance, putting it this way, putting it that way, taking the time to test it, then step back, then retest it, then rebuild it, all of that stuff. That is fantastic. And I love that there's that part of the Notion community. But Notion is also a B2B SaaS tool where it needs to get the job done, and it needs to get the job done fast for a
Yeah.
manager, for a leader, for even an individual contributor who isn't a tinkerer. They just want the thing to work, and they just want to get their work streamlined, and they are aware that that is better than it is in legacy tools like Microsoft and Confluence and so on. But there is that gap and that tension of like, how do I get to this performance without necessarily being like the tinkerer and the hobbyist?
Mm,
So one way that we can express the value of a consultancy is that we are the tinkerers and the hobbyists, but we figured out different use cases, 100 different use cases for sales, for marketing, for executive, for people ops, for customer support. And then we also have the ability to figure out your own custom workflow. And we can all translate that into immediate value, or at least immediate next steps that get you to the value. Um,
mm.
and one thing I just posted about today on LinkedIn, like our job as consultants is to provide the highest quality input. So like
Yeah.
experience and execution. But again,
Mm,
you need to collaborate with us on your side of the input to reach the output and then eventually lead to the results, right? So the output is a completed project or a completed workflow, and then the output
mm.
is increased productivity or increased efficiency or increased, profit margin or whatever metrics matter.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so our that consultancy takes care of these inputs that, by the way, in another dimension, these inputs is technically thousands, maybe hundreds of hours of trial and error and like learning and research and watching Thomas Frank on YouTube and watching Matthias on YouTube and then buying a eSlow template and then buying Passio's template. Like there's just so much trial and error. Like all of that
Yeah.
we do for you,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't have to, it's very done for you. That's sort of the
Mm.
phrase that's being used.
All right, so you've built like a 12, 13, person team around Notion Consultancy. You've been running for 3, 4 years. You're making, like several double, like lot of money of it currently. But there's always this sort of like, platform risk, right? What happens, would you say, to optimization if Notion shuts down tomorrow? Apple buys it, they roll it into Apple Notes, it's gone. What do you do?
We'll do Apple Notes consulting. I think this is a great question, but one of my fundamental beliefs around the work that we do, which again I call workspace design, is that any tool can do the job. It's just a matter of like how well and how convenient it is to get that job done, right? So like
Mm.
millions, actually probably billions of people get their work done in Microsoft Word or Microsoft tools and Google tools, and they feel just fine about it, right? But then when you try the modern tools, and if you're of sort of the open mindset, you'll realize how much more effective these tools are. So I don't think that we are a Notion consultancy, even though that's what we started with and that's what we currently
Yeah.
brand ourselves mostly. I think we're a tool agnostic consultancy that can then uh, apply the principles of workspace design, which really, in summary, is like the process of evaluating, deploying, and maintaining a workspace. And that workspace could be anything, right? Like right now, I think Notion is obviously 90% of our work, but we are exploring projects around Linear, around Attio,
Mm.
around Slack, around Zapier, around so on. So that's our strategy to like build out this category that involves other tools, and that's, I think, the future of the company, and hopefully future of the world in a way. So I'm very, very bullish about this, but I think we got to be patient with this, and it's probably going to take probably another decade to build something like really a really impactful, long lasting company. And maybe at some point I drop the TEM from there
Yeah.
and do my own thing. I want to be a filmmaker. I started a YouTube channel. I told you that. So maybe it will become Optimization. I don't know. We'll see.
Optimization.
The proper spelling.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. I think that's the perfect, few last words for the show. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of this with me today. This was so fantastic. Like, I had so much fun, and
Thank
I
you.
hope you enjoyed it as well. And yeah, really excited to see what you do with your YouTube channel and with the consultancy over the next years, where it goes.
Yes. One last thing. If you watch this, you the viewer, and you want to chat with me, I'm very open. So you can message me on X or Instagram at temnco. Subscribe to YouTube, please, or send me an email, or Karen pigeon carrier, whatever. Like, I'm open to chatting. Bye.
Amazing. Yeah. We put links to everything in the description, so it's super easy to reach Tem. And yeah, again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Excellent. Thank you, Matthias.
So much for my interview with Tem. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please leave below in the comments who I should talk to next. And if this got you all fired up and you also want to become a Notion consultant, then check this video out next. It's about my 99 favorite Notion tips, so everything you need to know to go from beginner to power user. Just click here, and I'll see you in a second.